here. So I'm Joseph Miranda, broker and owner of Miranda Executive Realty. Today we're going to be talking about, this is the second part of our three-part series where we're going to be talking about the commission lawsuit. Today we're going to talk about how you have that conversation with the seller. Before we jump into it here, let's get into our shameless plug. If there's anybody on this call or watching it later on YouTube, if you want to learn more about our company, you can always scan this QR code here. You can reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have a confidential interview or a confidential appointment with you. So go ahead and jump into it. Why do we do this? I'm sure there's plenty of trainings out there. There's plenty of other places that you can go to get this information. But here we believe the knowledge is power. And even if if you're familiar with the law, if you're familiar with how you already plan on kind of tackling this with buyers, maybe even tackling this with sellers, there may be one thing here that you learn, one script. We're going to be talking about a little bit about scripting today. There could be one thing here that you learn that could help you in a conversation that's going to come up. So knowledge is power. We push the knowledge. We really want our agents to be the most knowledgeable agents out there when it comes not only to this new law, but really just all of the laws, all of the ethics, everything that we do. We train. We want it. We want it to be done legally. We want it to be done ethically, and we want it to be done morally. Right. All of our transactions should meet at least that minimum. Right. So the legals of this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about here. Ethically, we're going to expect that our agents will be having the proper types of conversations. Morals can be a bit sliding depending on, the individual and what they truly believe. But, our goal is never to harm anybody. Our goal is always to do a good deal. How do you know you did a good deal? It's when everybody's sitting at the closing table and everybody is smiling and happy. Then you did a good deal. So kind of jumping ahead here. So this is a big change, right? This is going to be something that's really big. A lot of people are really nervous about it. Me personally, I'm excited about this change. I think that the people that are prepared for the conversations, people that are prepared, that are already thinking about what kind of objections are, buyers going to give, what kind of objections are sellers going to give, right? If we're already prepared for those conversations, I think we're going to be way ahead of the competition, right? There's agents that, that are not dealing with this right now. We talk to people and they still don't seem to understand the laws. We'll quickly summarize, some of that, but, change is going to happen. We have to embrace the change. Right. We need to figure out, how we can embrace the change, and then how can we pick up market share in this change? Every time, something happens, we have to figure out how to navigate, right? Recent history, COVID, right? That was a huge change. We had to wear masks. We had to, keep social distancing, keep 6 feet apart. There were infographics going around that, if somebody sneezes, it travels, 20 feet in every direction and everybody's going to get COVID. I mean, there was really a lot of chaos at that time. And we figured it out, right? And some real estate agents had the best years of their career during the COVID pandemic time. Right. I don't know if this time is going to be like that time. Let's hope that it is. But I do believe that the people that are most prepared for this change are going to be the people that are going to receive the most benefit from this new law going into effect. So let's touch real quick on antitrust. This is something that hasn't been, really discussed too frequently, something we should have learned in real estate school where they talk about antitrust. You can look into the Sherman Antitrust Act to get more information. But one thing that we as real estate agents can't do is we cannot discuss commissions with other brokers and other agents, right? That would fall into price fixing. So, you know, as an agent of Miranda Executive Realty, you know, you're allowed to discuss commission with me. I'm allowed to discuss commission with you. However, you don't want to be that agent that, you know, in a Facebook feed where somebody, you know, brings something up, and you don't want to be that agent that starts putting numbers out there, whether they're percentages, whether they're dollars, you know, whether they're, you know, fractions or decimals or whatever it is. You don't want to talk about commissions, right? Not numbers specifically. You can talk about commission. You can say X commission, X amount, X this, X that, whatever. That's fine. You know, just keep it general, right? But don't incriminate yourself and put something in writing, right? And start talking about, you know, 2% this or 3% this, or, you know, flat fee this, or, you know, whatever it is. Don't do that, right? You don't want to get caught up in some sort of antitrust. Right now, we're all covered. Well, if you're a member of the National Association of Realtors, I assume everybody is, we should be covered underneath this lawsuit, right? So what are the big changes that are happening to this lawsuit? I do encourage, in the last one, we did encourage you to go find the lawsuit. I believe this is like Article 58, I believe, where they talk about the biggest changes. A lot of it's just a lot of legalese, a lot of legal language. Right, but these are the biggest changes that we're going to encounter as agents, and the way that we need to shift and we need to change in order to ensure that we're in compliance with this new settlement. Last I knew, it's August 17th. That could be updated. This thing kind of seems to be changing quite a bit as we go along. So if somebody knows of a new date, please let me know. Right. Number one, you do not need to be, or an individual does not need to be a member of an association or MLS to receive compensation. They do still need to be a licensed real estate agent, right? They need to be at a brokerage. You know, the broker is the one that receives the commission, but you know, you don't need to be a member of NAR or any of the local associations. We cannot offer compensation in the MLS, so that's going to go away very soon. Very, very soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes away before even this goes into effect, but you know, I guess that remains to be seen. There is no requirement for a listing agent for a homeowner to compensate the buyer's broker, right? Actually, there's a listing agent either, right? There's no requirement to do that. There used to be, I know in our local associations, if there was no compensation, if you put 0 there, then they wouldn't allow you to to submit that listing in the MLS. That's going away. So now, you know, compensation does not need to be offered, not up front at least, right? It can still be negotiated. They can't create a mechanism to offer or advertise the compensation, right? Which means, you know, you can't create some sort of third party portal, or, you know, some other website somewhere where it's made for, you know, for that. The only place that we can advertise compensation to a buyer is going to be on the listing brokerage website. So if you have a website, you can put it there. On our website, we are working on that we're working on it with our company that does our website to be able to show that on there. So hopefully that will be going live, that when we have listings in our brokerage in Miranda Executive Realty, if nothing else, we can show if a seller is offering compensation from there, right? So contract changes, right? Some of these are things that didn't change, but I think were misconceptions, right? You cannot state that your services is free unless they really are. A buyer's agent services have never really been free, right? But I think that's where some of this confusion came in, where, you know, buyer's agents were, you know, they were saying that the seller pays their commission, right? So essentially what they're saying is it's free to the buyer, but it's still not free, right? The buyer's agent does get compensated for their services. After this law, you know, after this settlement goes into effect, the buyer's agent can and will still be able to be compensated for their services, right? If they ask, you know, how much is your commission, right? This again is not a change, right? It's a clarification. You must state that your commission is negotiable, because it is. It's always been negotiable. There's no law. There was never, something out there that stated that commission must be this, right? Now, a broker, your broker or another broker may not have accepted a commission below a certain amount, but that doesn't mean it's not negotiable, right? That means that broker may not be willing to necessarily negotiate, but it is still a negotiable number, right? This one has been a law. It wasn't really practiced, but it was a law, right? The buyer's broker must have a buyer agreement signed before showing a property advertised in the MLS, right? Our brokerage has been doing buyer agency agreements since inception, basically, right? We've understood agency and explained the different type of agency to our buyers as we go along. That tells them, our duties and our obligations to them, right? There is a difference between a transaction broker and a single agent and no brokerage relationship, right? Those duties will vary, right? If we're a transaction broker with our customer, they can't necessarily count on us for, 100% obedience, right? Or 100% confidentiality. Single agent, they do, right? So whatever agreement, whether it's a listing or a buyer that you're having your customer sign, make sure you understand what your duties and obligations are based on the type of relationship that you're entering with them, right? If you don't understand it, you need to talk to your broker, right? But make sure that you understand that, right? And then commission can only be what is agreed to and signed. So your commission needs to be discussed up front. Before you show this property that's in the MLS to the buyer, that you need to discuss, and then they need to sign and agree to that commission, whether it's a showing agreement or an agency agreement. It doesn't matter, but they need to agree to pay something. If they don't, you can't negotiate it later, right? You have to negotiate it before you show that property to them. Whether you meet them there and you get assigned in the driveway before you go in, it doesn't matter, but it needs to be discussed and it needs to be signed before you actually go in. And show that property. And your commission amount cannot be open-ended. You can't say something like whatever the seller's offering, right? It has to be something that is predetermined, right? And how do you come up with that number? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit here, right? So seller concession rules, right? So a seller's concession can be offered by in the MLS, but it cannot be specifically for the buyer's agent compensation, right? So you can say, seller offering, X amount of dollars or X percentage to the buyer at closing, and that can be applied towards the agreement, the commission agreement that the buyer has with their agent, right? But you cannot specifically say seller's offering, X amount to the buyer at closing to be applied towards buyer's agent's commission, right? Because that's a workaround. We're not really trying to work around this law. We're trying to work with this law, right? So don't try to work around the law. Don't try to be, creative or whatever with it. Just follow it to the T, right? If you know that we can do it, then do it. If you don't know that we can do it, then ask. If you can't get the answer, then maybe just hold off on it, because, the consequence of the penalty may not be worth it, right? The concessions have to be requested in the contract. So if a buyer's agent is going to ask, right, or if the buyer wants the agent to request their commission be paid by the seller, then that needs to be in the contract, right? That now becomes a negotiable term. That becomes part of the bottom line for the seller, something that needs to be discussed, right? Because the listing agent may go in and the seller may only be offering so much, if anything at all, for commission. Now the buyer's agent comes in, they want a higher amount. So that affects the seller's bottom line. So, maybe the price, they say, well, the price, I'm okay on that. Well, let's negotiate this agent's commission over here, right? That now becomes part of the negotiation. And the buyer's agent cannot be paid more than what's in the buyer agency agreement, right? If you say a low number in there and it's written in there and you find out that the seller's offering the buyer more, right? Because the seller can put in there that they're offering a concession to the buyer's going to pick up that concession. But if us as agents, or you as an agent, or we as agents do not ask for that amount, if our amount is lesser, then the buyer keeps the difference. You can't change your agreement now because the seller is offering a higher concession in that case, right? Now, I've not heard anything that we can't do it the other way. I've not heard that we can't reduce our commission in order to make the deal happen. So to me, it makes sense that we would go for a higher amount when we're getting that buyer agency agreement signed, or that showing agreement signed, right? Get it at a higher amount, because again, that's now subject to negotiation in the purchase contract. Put your number in there. If they can't do it, then we negotiate it, right? But don't sell yourself short in the beginning thinking that somehow this is going to be an advantage to you. You probably will, or may end up in a worse situation than what you could have been originally, right? So do what the sellers have been doing for years, right? Start high and just tell them we're willing to negotiate, from there. Don't sell yourself short on that one, because you cannot ask for more money, right? But you can reduce your commission if necessary, right? So buyer agent compensation rules. Again, you can only put it on the website, right? Brokers and agents are not allowed to offer buyer agent compensation on the MLS. You can't create an alternative, right? And then, antitrust, keep that in mind, right? Just, keep in mind that, you're not going to be wanting to share these things. So we found a little infographic here online. This is from T360. Maybe you can find it online as well. This is kind of the old way that, that the offer worked, right? That, the listing agent went in, they kind of negotiated everything. Everything was already preset, put into the MLS, the buyer broker would see it. Hopefully they had a buyer agency agreement at that point, because, even though it wasn't a law that was really followed by most, it was a law. Maybe it became not a law at some point. I don't know when it ever was not law to have the buyer agency agreement signed. I think most brokerages just didn't enforce it. It was something that was kind of overlooked, right? But this is where your offer for compensation was in the MLS. And if you guys want a copy of this, let us know. We can send this over to you. This might be something that you're going to want to bring to your listing presentation, right? And you can discuss, this is the old way that commission used to work, right? This is the way that, a buyer's agent, their compensation was discussed, or their compensation was laid out, right? So, that's the old way that it was taken care of. This is the new way, right? So, and this is a little bit more complicated, right? But if you just kind of follow along here, we'll start with the seller, right? Seller and the listing broker, they're going to meet, right? Where they're going to discuss the compensation, right? They can let the buyer broker know, whether it's through a phone call or on their website, or, whatever it may be. That buyer broker is going to go back to the buyer, they're going to put that in the contract, right? So it's pretty simple here. Again, biggest difference is that offer for compensation is going to bypass the MLS, right? It's bypassing the MLS, and it's going to be, broker to broker, basically negotiations, right? Broker to seller negotiations, or buyer to buyer agent to, listing agent to seller type negotiations, right? So we just have to be sure when, when we're working with a buyer that we understand this. Your commission must be determined up front, right? It can't be something that, that you do later, right? So, the number one thing that we need to keep in mind, like I said earlier, don't try to find a workaround for this. It's not going to be worth it. This law, just focus on educating yourself, right? That's why we're here, is to get more knowledge and education on this. How do we deal with this? What kind of conversations, will we be having, right? And, don't try to work around it. Change sucks, right? Change is always hard. Change is always different, right? But at the end of the day, we need to embrace this change. This change is coming whether we like it or not, right? So how do we prepare for this change, right? Scripting, role playing, right? Knowing what objections people are going to have and knowing the objection handlers, right? And how do you handle that objection, right? Number one, if you're not scripting and you're not role playing, if you don't know what objections are coming up, you're going to want to start doing that. But number two, if you understand the law, right? If you understand this settlement that's coming up, you're going to be able to explain this to the seller or the buyer, right? Exactly how it needs to be explained, right? And when they understand it, if you can explain it in a way that they understand, and when you understand it, you're going to see that it's really not that different than what we're already dealing with. There's a lot of fear about all of this. I don't watch news, but I know that there was some, misinformation going out there with news. But, if we understand it, then it takes a lot of the uncertainty and it takes a lot of the fear away from, having to deal with this, right? So, some scripts, right? Some things that, something that we would say to a seller, right? When the first thing comes up, we're the listing agent, right? Let's approach this from the listing side, right? So we're going to go through the listing presentation or the listing appointment or whatever you call it, same way that we normally would, right? Here's the services I give you, and here's the compensation, right? And we're going to tell them the buyer's agent has to do their own job to get compensated, right? Now we need to explain to the seller up front that more than likely in their initial offer, in the first offer that they that they make, right, or in any offer, there's going to be some language in there about the buyer's agent's compensation. We need to prepare the seller for that, right? Because if you don't, then they're going to be blindsided, and then they're going to say, well, you didn't tell me, or why didn't you tell me, or I didn't know that, right? We didn't do a good job. We didn't do a good job explaining it. So number one, you're on your listing appointment. You're going to go through the services, go through the things that you do, right? What are you going to do to market their property? And then you're going to prepare them as part of the contracts that come in. If there's another agent involved, which in my opinion there should be, right? We should still want to cooperate with other brokers because they're still going to have the buyers. Then there may be something that comes up. There may be something that, that is going to, affect this bottom line, right? Here's what you would get if there was no other compensation. However, there may be, so let's talk about that, right? Now, what about unrepresented buyers, right? You subscribe to, I don't know, homes.com, and you're getting leads on your own listings. You need to have that conversation initially as well. So something else that might happen is I might get a phone call directly from a customer that wants to buy your property, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, right? How is that going to be handled? Are you going to receive additional compensation if you were to handle both sides? Now, remember, we can't do dual agency. If you're signing a listing agreement as a transaction broker, right, you're going to need to help ensure that your customer understands what your duties are as a transaction broker, especially when there's a buyer, a buyer that's going to be from the same brokerage involved, right? That, the sellers can no longer count on, full confidentiality. Well, they can't anyway if you're a transaction broker. But, you need to understand your duties as an agent now, right? If you sign them as a single agent, which I don't think you should. We don't recommend, listings as single agent in this brokerage at least. But if you do, and then the buyer comes along and we have to transition them to transaction broker, or transition our agreement to transaction broker, right? What things change, right? That doesn't mean that anything that they told you in confidence before you can go out and share it, right? It's from that point forward. But how are we going to deal with unrepresented buyers? Is there additional compensation? I think there should be, because there's more work, right? But that conversation needs to be had, and you need to think about when you're having this commission conversation, right? Unrepresented buyers, what are we going to do about them, right? So we're, in my opinion, and I think we may already be there, but we're about to go into a very competitive listing market because, the cliche saying, list to last, right? We've been saying it for years, and I think it's really going to become very prevalent in this market, in this environment that we're about to enter, because agents are already used to negotiating their commission on the listing side. On the buyer side, not so much. There's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, right? But when you think about it, now all we have to do with the buyers is have the same conversation that we've been having with the sellers all along, right? We just have to have that compensation conversation up front, right? But some people are, not necessarily comfortable with that. So I think a lot of people are, leaning towards the listing side. I mean, we've already been in a very competitive listing environment, but I think we're about to head into something that's going to be more competitive. Jacqueline, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. So my question is this, in reference to dual agency, I understand that, representing the buyer and the seller, same transaction, that's not legal. But does that also apply? I just want to clarify my mind. Like some licensed MLOs, they're actually doing the financing and also finding the property. Does that apply to them as well?
No, that will not. No. So dual agency is when you represent a buyer and a seller on the sales part of the transaction. As far as like a loan officer, a loan officer still can represent the customer as their loan officer, and then also the customer as their buying agent.
Great.
Now, the only thing I caution, right, is, there is a little bit of a conflict of interest there because, there's additional compensation when it closes. So, for me, when we, if a loan officer or an agent, you were to represent both sides, the main thing is just disclose, right? Disclose everything. Don't open any liability to yourself. When we're on a listing side and we get the buyer and we're acting as a transaction broker, at that point, we represent the transaction. And that's what we want our customers to understand is, in this stage here, Mr. Seller, I've always had your best interest at heart. I've always wanted to get you the best deal absolutely possible. I have this buyer over here that is interested and is really making, a great and a compelling offer. However, I just want you to understand that, we're going to be in a transaction broker type relationship, which means I will not be representing you necessarily in this transaction. I will be representing the transaction. My conversations and my guidance will be in what's in the best interest of this transaction going forward. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Got it.
Right? So yeah, dual agency, we never want to do that. And, I think in most states, dual agency is an illegal thing. And basically what dual agency is I would tell the seller, hey, I work for you and I have your best interest at heart, right? I'm going to get you the best deal absolutely possible. And then to tell the buyer, hey, I work for you. I have your best interest at heart, and I'm going to get you the best deal absolutely possible. That's literally impossible when you have a seller and a buyer who are literally at the opposite ends of that negotiating spectrum, right? Because seller wants the most for their money and the buyer wants to pay the least for the property. There's no way that we can say that, hey, look, I represent you the same as I'm going to represent you, because there's conflicting interests, which makes us conflict of interest right there.
Perfectly clear. Thank you so much.
Awesome. No problem. No problem. So when we get to the, let's go back here. So, commissions are coming down, and the offers for lower, I don't know if you've noticed in the MLS, right? But the offers for lower commissions seems to be kind of more and more. But if you're looking in the MLS, the sellers are still choosing to make an offer of compensation up front, right? When you look in the MLS, most listings, when you go down, when you're looking at what the commission is for the buyer's agent, there's still offers there. Now we are seeing some zeros. We see the ones that are like, we've always seen the ones for like $1, things like that, right? And keeping in mind, those were always negotiable. Those commissions were always negotiable. Just because they weren't making the offer or they aren't making the offer for compensation in the MLS right now, that's still negotiable, right? It's always been negotiable, right? What's going to change is just the fact that it won't be on there. But right now in the MLS, most sellers are still choosing to make an offer for compensation up front, right? And we're going to go through a little bit of scripting, right? Give you guys a couple of objections. Now, this is not our next training 2 weeks from now. When is that date? June something. I don't know. June 4th, June 11th. Our next date, June 11th, I think. This is where we're going to talk all about objection handlers, right? This is where, we've already started doing the research. As you can see, our buyer's agent training, we had some scripts in there, some things to say. This one's going to have some scripts, things to say. We're going to break it into 2 segments between buyer's agents and listing agents. We're going to try to figure out as many objections possible that the buyer's agent and the listing agent are going to run into. Some of these scripts, may be repeated. They probably will be, because I think we've got some of the, right now, what we believe to be some of the biggest objections, out there. Right. So, we'll go over some of those. But, during your conversation, when you're speaking to the owner, make sure that the seller understands that, the total commission is, here's my commission as the listing agent and here's the buyer's agent's commission. Right? And then have that conversation with them, right? Make sure that they understand, how that your commission, the listing agent and the buyer's agent commission is going to affect their bottom line, right? What do you say? We can't control what the buyer's agent will or will not ask for as compensation. We have no control over that. One agent might be willing to take this, another agent might be willing to take this, right? Depending on the agent. A strong agent will probably ask for more money. A weak agent might ask for less, right? Strong agent might hold out for their money, right? Another agent might not, right? You can't not say, though, if you're not offering compensations, agents won't show your house. That is another reason that we ended up in this situation here, is because agents said that, right? I think that was exactly what was said. If you're not offering compensation, nobody's going to show your house. And then, that like upset the seller. And I think that's how we ended up here, right? I know that was part of how we ended up here, at least how this lawsuit here is concerned. So, all right, next slide here. So what if a seller doesn't want to pay the buyer's agent's commission? Right. So I'm going to talk to them, so we've discussed the changes to the law, Other than commission, the net price we discussed is good, right? Right. So up until this point, I've told them about the law. We've talked about maybe even their net number after their fees, their expenses, their closing costs, whatever else it might be. Other than the commission, the net price that we discussed is good, correct? Well, yes, it is. That's a good number. Okay, so we're going to ask them, right? Because you always want to probe and you always want to dig for more information, right? Can you clarify why you don't want to pay a buyer's agent commission? And a lot of people, I think, are under the impression that as of when this new law goes into effect, right? There's a lot of people that are under the impression that they no longer have to pay a buyer's agent, compensate a buyer's agent, and that is true to a degree, right? That is true in essence, right? But is that going to be the case in most cases? I think that it might not be, right? Because again, going to the next, knowing that a buyer's agent will likely be requesting some form of compensation, wouldn't it be better to handle that up front and already account for those numbers, right? Isn't it better that we have this conversation now and we can account for this amount of money now, right? And that maybe when the buyer's agent calls me and asks me if we're offering some sort of compensation, or maybe we put that number out there already into the multiple listing as as a concession to the buyer to be applied towards their closing costs, right? Doesn't it make more sense to just talk about that now, to put that number out there now and get in front of it, right? Maybe you want to offer a lesser amount and the buyer's agent's going to come along and they're going to want a higher amount, right? In either case, this very likely could be the reality of our situation. So let's go ahead and just dealing at it now, right? So you're going to have your net sheet. And if I can get you this amount that we discussed, wouldn't that be okay, even if you have to pay a buyer's agent's commission, right? Because do they really care that they pay a commission to, a buyer's agent or a listing agent or, a title company or whoever? Or do they just have that number in mind, right? How much do you want to sell your house for? They have that number. They'll tell you that number, right? What's the number you want to list for? Or how much do you need to walk away with? They know what they want to walk away with. They know what they need to walk away with. They're going to pay off their mortgage. Maybe they want to pay off some credit cards. They want to put a down payment for another house, right? Whatever it is, they know what it is. Well, if I can get you this number, even by paying, an agent commission, would that be okay? Right? Hit it up front. Don't wait, right? Be proactive. Don't be reactive, right? Well, what about this? I want to wait to list so I don't have to pay a buyer agent commission, right? Well, number one, they've always been negotiable. So even if we wait until August, my fee as your listing agent is going to be the same, right? My fee is not going to change, number one, right? Well, but what about the buyer's agent commission? Well, that's always also been negotiable, right? The only thing that changes is we're no longer allowed to discuss commissions that are being offered in the MLS. We just can't put those commissions into the multiple listing. But isn't it free after August, right? We need to reset that mindset, right? No, right? That's not the case. They've always been negotiable, right? My commission, buyer's agent's commission, all of these commissions have always been negotiable. The only thing is, when this law goes into effect, when this settlement, finally clears, it's just the way that we can discuss the compensation is how that's going to change. And that's why we're discussing it now, so that you can be prepared for it when that does finally happen, right? It's all about having these conversations up front. That's it, right? Don't shy away from them. Don't run away from them. Don't, whatever. Make sure that you're having these conversations up front, right? How do we talk about it, right? Because the change is not that the buyer's agent won't be paid. The change, again, is how it's being offered. By setting aside an amount that we decide is fair to offer to a buyer agent, we may be able to put a cap on the amount that you would actually pay. Right? We can go through the process. We'll set that money aside now. That way, you're going to know the maximum out-of-pocket potential, the maximum out-of-pocket that it will potentially be for you. Right? And if by chance the buyer's agent isn't as skilled as I am and they ask for less than we set aside, you're going to retain the difference. Does that make sense? Right? Run the scenarios. If you offer this, you'll walk away with this. If you offer this, you'll walk away with this. Right? Run those different scenarios and let them know where they'll be at. Right? What about multiple offers? Right? Our job has always been to understand the contracts, to understand the offers, to understand the laws and how it's going to affect the seller's bottom line. What does the seller care about? The seller cares about making the most money possible on their home, right? And for most people, that's their primary number one objective. I want to sell my house for top dollar, right? Well, the highest offer now, right, may not be the highest, top line offer, right? That first number may no longer be their highest amount because now we have to consider the commission that's also being requested in that contract, right? Because an agent that's, requesting, a lower amount, right? You have two offers, $500,000, right? Everything else the same, doesn't matter, cash or financing, I don't know, right? The money still spends the same, it's still the same amount, right? Two offers, but one, the agent offer is asking for a lower amount. That now has to be part of the conversation when you're reviewing multiple offers. That has to be part of the consideration when you're reviewing multiple offers. Maybe the cash buyer, that agent's asking for a little bit more in the contract, right? But it's a cash buyer, so the net would maybe be a little bit lower, but it's a cash buyer, right? Right. So just make sure that you're prepared for those conversations, and the best time to do it's going to be in the beginning of your relationship, when you're over there talking about listing their property, when you're running the net sheet. That's when you want to talk about the compensation, right? Another question that one of our agents mentioned to us, I think it was last week, were past clients, previous customers that had closed, right? Can I get my commission back? Well, you can, but it's part of the lawsuit, right? If you qualify, you should get a postcard in the mail. So keep an eye out for the postcard, right? We wouldn't be giving that back to them directly. That's why we're covered under this NAR umbrella, right? So the biggest change that I see coming, the biggest thing that I think we need to be prepared for, before COVID, it seemed like we were in more of a skills-based market, right? It was a very different market. We went into COVID. The real estate market got white hot. Right? There's just buyers and buyers and buyers and sellers, and anybody that's been doing this for a while probably remembers the multiple offers and all of the the jokes that people were offering their firstborn child, or all of these things. There were buyers buying properties totally sight unseen, right? Paying way over asking. It was just an insane time, and I think we got away from our sales skills. Now, recently, with interest rates doing what they're doing, we've had to re-implement some of those skills. We've had to become more of a skill-based agent again, right? But now with this new law, we really need to sharpen our saw, right? We really need to bring those skills out, those sales skills, right? The education. We need to be educating our customers all along the way. Whether it's a buyer or a seller, that customer needs to understand all of these things, and they need to understand it exactly how you understand it. Because if they don't, there's going to be a point where you're going to be sitting down with them, right? We're going to be sitting down with them, and the number that they thought they were going to get is going to be very different, and that's going to be a very difficult conversation to have, right? So have these tough conversations up front. We've already had conversations. My team, we're already doing all of this. We've already had these conversations. And for the most part, our buyers are receptive. They understand, right? If you're an MX agent, go into your agent resources portal. There's downloadables there, right? We talked about your value proposition that you need to create, right? Because now you need to let your buyers know, what am I doing, right? I'm asking you up front to compensate me. Now we are going to go over here, and that's going to be in the contract, right? Now my compensation is part of the overall deal that we have, right? But we need to, what are you doing for your compensation, right? What are you doing? Do you have a value proposition? Number one rule: don't say you're going to do something that you're not going to do, right? I used to know an agent that would go on listing appointments, and this agent would tell the sellers that they were going to mail postcards, and they never mail postcards. And I'm like, man, you're going to get caught with that someday, right? You're going to get caught not mailing postcards. So why say that you're doing something that you don't do, right? So get your value proposition. I know NAR has a lot of things, it's like 185 things that a buyer's agent does, 100 and something things that a listing agent does, right? Copy that off. Put your branding on it. Doesn't matter, right? Talk about the things that you do, right? Talk about your specific skill set, right? And why you are going to be worth them paying. Because that's what we did with our listings, is we talked about why we were the best agent, or why we are the best agent to sell their property. Here's my marketing plan, right? Here's my reviews from past customers. Here's what I've sold in your neighborhood, right? I come recommended from, your mom, right? Whatever it is, right? We were talking about all these things. So continue to have those conversations. Now do them with your buyers, and now figure out how to add that last piece into your listing presentation, if and by what means a buyer's agent would be compensated. Don't skip it, right? So revamp your listing proposition, right? You have to redo it. You have to, oh, I skipped ahead, sorry. 3 types of agents, right? The first agent is what I want you to be. The first agent is what we expect our agents at Miranda Executive to be. We expect our agents to begin practicing and implementing this now. Get these agreements signed now. Do it now, right? Why do it now? Because the law is not in effect. And so right now it's practice, right? You're practicing because the commission is still advertised on the MLS. But start writing it into your buyer agreements now, right? Start going to the listing appointments and having that conversation now, and prepare them, for that August deadline, right? The second type, right? They wait until right before the settlement to implement it, maybe like sometime in June, right? If you haven't implemented it yet, you might be the second type. I don't know. And the third type is the worst, right? Don't wait until the absolute last minute to begin implementing this, because that first agent's going to be way ahead of you. That first agent's going to have more skills in explaining this law. That first agent is going to do a better job, even though as a buyer's agent, you may be the better choice. More experience, right? Stronger negotiator, whatever it is, right? But if this other agent has more experience having this conversation, they may be the one to get that business, and it may, it may cost 1 or 2 deals while you try to figure this out. So don't wait to figure it out. Do it now, right? So change your listing agreement, or your listing proposition, your listing, your marketing plan, whatever it is. Start working on it now. Now is the time to do it. If you wait, I think, you know, it's going to be a little bit of pain. I think it's going to be, you know, as more agents begin implementing this, their skill level is increasing. So we need to be keeping up, if not staying ahead of all of the other agents that are out there. Start doing it now. Start, you know, get stuck. Right, now's the time to, you know, somebody asks you a question, maybe you don't know exactly how to answer it, maybe you answer it poorly, right? Now's the time to get stuck, and then bring it back to us. You know, let us, you know, let us work it out together. Right, let's figure out, okay, oh yeah, that's a new one, I never heard that one. Right? I didn't think about somebody saying that. How should we respond to that in the future? Right, let's brainstorm that. Let's figure that out. But you're not going to have that opportunity if you don't start doing it. If change is coming, whether you want it to or not. Right, whether you want change or not, the change is coming. So you might as well embrace it. You might as well start doing it now. You know, get ahead of everybody else. Get ahead of that curve. Be that skills-based agent again. That skills-based agent now is going to be more important than ever. It's going to be more important than ever to have the skills that it takes. Number one, it's a little bit tougher market right now. Right, it's not that COVID market anymore. Number two, when this changes, the conversations need to change. Make the change now. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? Anything I can answer? Did anybody have any thoughts on this? Maybe some scripts or something that you've heard? Now would be the time if anybody has anything. All right. Nothing. All right. Well, I either did a good job or I put you all asleep. I don't know which one it is.
It's me again, Joseph.
Oh, yeah, hey, Jacqueline, go ahead.
Hey, so are you guys anywhere near Hollywood? East Hollywood by any chance?
Yeah. Yeah, we work Broward. We were, you know, Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami. That's where our agents are throughout.
So Broward, as in which location?
Well, I mean, our home base office is in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And then we've got, so our brokerage, so we're a virtual brokerage. This is actually how all of our trainings happen, are on here just like this. We also have what we call the lobby rooms. So that's the agents that are in our brokerage. Our models don't stay stuck, right? So, you know, we do trainings like this. And then we also have what we call the lobby room, where our admin, usually I'm in there. One of our managers is usually in there. Then, you know, when an agent needs something, they pop in, right? And that's where we just kind of drop what we're doing. We stop whatever we're doing and we help them out. You know, this way, if an agent has an immediate need, we don't want them to be sitting waiting for, you know, for somebody to get back to them, or, you know, waiting for somebody to call them back. Monday through Friday, or business days, business hours, you're going to be able to get somebody that's going to be able to help you through whatever issue it is you have right then and there. And then we also have conference rooms. So we've got conference rooms all the way from, I think, Palm Beach Gardens, going all the way down to, I think, our most southern one. Yeah, wherever that one is, Brickell. Yeah, so we've got access to conference rooms as well. So, you know, if an agent does want to meet a customer in person, I mean, you can always grab a cup of coffee as well, but there's also the conference room options with vendors that we work with. We have a lot of vendors that, you know, we cooperate with, that they allow us access to their conference rooms as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? I hope it does.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, awesome. So any other questions from anybody? No. All right. So, well, thank you guys so much. Our next Ask the Broker is June 11th. This is where we're going to be talking about scripts. This is where we're going to be talking about role playing. I really recommend that everybody get somebody to become like a scripting or a role playing partner, somebody that you're going over the different types of scripts with, you know, on a regular basis, whether it's a listing presentation, you know, whether it's learning, you know, cold calling, you know, for sub by owners, expireds, you know, a buyer presentation, whatever it is, you know, these are the things that build our skills. and prepare us for, you want to make the mistake when you're practicing, right? Practicing your scripts, right? That's why, as a team, right? A sports team, they practice together so that they can learn, how each other works, how each other moves, right? And they can make the mistakes practicing. And then when it comes time and they're actually playing the game, right? They're going to know each other's moves. They're going to know where one person's going. They're going to know the plays, right? That's the value of scripting and role playing. So our next one is going to be all about the scripts, all about role playing. Hope you guys can make it there. It's going to really just be about this. But if you're interested in learning other scripts, or in our brokerage, if you want to find somebody to do scripts with regularly, role playing, if you have a mentor, start there. But if you don't have a mentor, pop in with us, and we'll see if we can pair you up with somebody and get you there, because that's where you're going to learn those conversations. That's where if I have a role play partner and I had a tough call yesterday, then today I'm going to put that in front of my role play partner and see what they say. Right? Hey, I'm calling. Your property just expired. Are you going to be relisting the property? Yeah, but I'm staying with the agent that I have, and now I'm stuck. Right? What do I say to that? Well, when I do my role playing tomorrow, I'm going to put that in front of my partner and see what my partner says. Right? And maybe we need to brainstorm and work it out. Right? Or maybe we just go into the agent resources and we find all the scripts there and we find out what to say. Right? So, last shameless plug. There's the QR code. Jacqueline, if you're interested in learning more about us, you can scan that QR code. We'll tell you all about our company, what we do. I really believe that we've got a really great product. So, does anybody, before we finish here, any last questions? Any last comments, concerns, thoughts?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I really hope you found value in this. I really hope that this helps make at least one of your conversations, if not all of your conversations, easier moving forward. I hope to see all the same people June 11th. In the meantime, like I say, don't stay stuck. If you need anything as an agent, please pop into our lobby room. Get in with Irene or get with myself, and let's figure out how to get you unstuck and how to get you to that next level of business. Thank you again, everybody. It's great seeing you all. Hope you have a great day.